The first day of school started like any other. Parents hugged their children goodbye. Teachers stood by their doors with practice smiles. The hallways buzzed with the nervous energy of a new beginnings. And then Derek Morrison knocked someone down. He didn't trip. He didn't stumble. He walked straight into the new history teacher carrying a box of classroom supplies and sent her crashing into the lockers. Papers exploded everywhere. A framed photo hit the floor and the glass shattered. The woman, mid-30s, quiet eyes, a posture that didn't belong to someone getting knocked down, hit the linoleum hard on her left knee. Derek laughed. His 3 football players laughed behind him. The 5th man, the wrestling coach, didn't laugh, but he didn't stop anyone either. "Watch where you're going," Derek said. He flicked a piece of paper off his sleeve like it had personally offended him. "You new here. Hallways are for walking, not camping." The new teacher didn't respond. She sat on the floor for exactly 2 seconds. Then she stood up. No anger, no tears, no trembling hands reaching for help. She just started picking up her papers one by one while the varsity quarterback stood over her like he owned the building. A few students stopped to watch. A couple of teachers peeked out from their classrooms. Nobody moved to help her. Nobody said a word to Derek. That's how it worked at Westbrook High. Derek Morrison had been there for 15 years. He started as a gym teacher, bullied his way into coaching varsity football, and somewhere along the line became the unofficial king of the entire building. The principal deferred to him. The school board listened when he spoke. Parents sent him gift cards and season tickets. Derek didn't have a title that matched his power, but everyone knew the truth. What Derek wanted, Derek got. And right now, on the first day of school, Derek wanted the new teacher to understand something. This was his hallway, his school, his kingdom. "You hear me?" he said, looking down at her. "I asked if you were new." She finished gathering her papers, stood up, brushed off her pants, and then looked at him with eyes that didn't blink. "Yes," she said. "I'm the new history teacher." That was it. No challenge. No attitude. Just a simple answer delivered in a voice so calm it almost felt strange. Derek smiled. He liked this one. Quiet. Easy. The kind of person who wouldn't cause trouble. "Good," he said. "Then you already know the rules. Stay out of my way. Don't cause problems. And next time, get out of the hallway faster." He walked off with his players trailing behind him like hyenas following a lion. The wrestling coach lingered for a moment, watching the new teacher with something that looked almost like guilt. Then he left too. The woman stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by broken glass and scattered worksheets. Her name was Quinn. And Derek Morrison had just made the worst mistake of his life. He just didn't know it yet. Quinn finished cleaning up the mess by herself. No custodian came to help. No fellow teacher offered a hand. She found a broom in a storage closet, swept up the glass, and walked to her classroom with a box that was now dented on one side. The room was at the end of the hallway. The far end. The forgotten end. Paint peeling off the walls. A window that didn't open. Desks that smelled like last year's cafeteria lunch. She set her box down on the teacher's desk and looked around at the 4 walls that would become her home for the next 10 months. Anyone else would have cried. Anyone else would have called the union. Anyone else would have walked straight to the principal's office and demanded an apology. Quinn opened her box and started unpacking. She arranged her pens. She organized her lesson plans. She tested the dry erase markers to see which ones still worked. 3 of them were dead. She put them in a separate pile and made a mental note to buy more with her own money, like she'd been doing for years. This wasn't her first difficult situation. Not by a long shot. Westbrook High didn't know anything about Quinn. Nobody had bothered to look at her resume past the first page. She had a teaching degree. She had 5 years of classroom experience. She had references that checked out. What she didn't have was a husband dropping her off, or friends waiting at the entrance, or a social media presence that announced her arrival to the world. She was just a woman with a box walking into a building that didn't want her. But here's what the resume didn't say. Quinn served 8 years in the United States Marines. Not administrative work, not support roles. She was a drill instructor at Paris Island, one of the few women in history to hold that position at that particular command. She spent nearly a decade breaking down grown men and rebuilding them into something stronger. She mastered the art of controlled violence, psychological warfare, and the kind of discipline that makes normal people uncomfortable. She could end Derek Morrison in 4 seconds, tear his shoulder from its socket in 3, have him unconscious on the floor in 2. But Quinn didn't join the Marines to hurt people. She joined to learn control. And right now, control meant unpacking her box and ignoring the pain in her knee. The bell rang. Students filed in. Quinn taught her first class like nothing had happened that morning. She didn't mention Derek. She didn't complain about the broken frame or the dead markers. She just taught. Ancient civilizations. The rise and fall of empires. The way power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. She almost smiled at the irony. Day 2 started worse. Quinn arrived at 6:45 in the morning, the same time she would arrive every day for the rest of the year. The parking lot was empty except for the custodial staff and one familiar truck parked across 2 spaces near the front entrance. Derek's truck. She parked in the back, away from everyone, the way she preferred, walked to the building with her bag over her shoulder and her coffee in her hand. The morning air was cool, the sky was gray. It felt like the kind of day where something bad was about to happen. She didn't know how right she was. Her classroom key didn't work. She tried it 3 times, nothing. The lock wouldn't turn. She checked the number on the door against the number on her key. Same number, same lock. Different result. She walked to the main office. The secretary, a woman named Carol, who had been at Westbrook for 22 years and hated every minute of the last 15, looked up from her computer with the expression of someone who had already decided not to help before hearing the problem. "My key doesn't work," Quinn said. Carol blinked. "Did you try it?" "3 times." "Maybe you're doing it wrong." Quinn didn't respond to that. She just waited. Carol sighed, pulled out a master key, and followed Quinn to the classroom. She tried the lock herself. Nothing. "Huh," Carol said. She tried again, still nothing. "Someone changed the lock," Carol said, more to herself than to Quinn. "We don't usually do that without a work order." "I didn't submit a work order." Carol looked at her. Well, someone did. They stood in the hallway for another minute while Carol called maintenance. The maintenance supervisor, a man named Gary who had been at Westbrook even longer than Carol, arrived with a drill and a replacement lock. He looked at the door, looked at the lock, looked at Quinn. "Weird," he said. "What's weird?" Carol asked. "This lock is brand new, different model than the rest of the building. Someone had to order this specifically." Carol glanced at Quinn. Quinn said nothing. Gary replaced the lock in 10 minutes. Quinn thanked him. Carol walked back to the office without saying goodbye. Quinn entered her classroom and found her desk drawer open. She hadn't left it open. She checked the contents. Nothing was missing. But someone had moved her pens, rearranged her sticky notes, opened the bottom drawer where she kept her personal folder. The folder was still there, still sealed. She opened it anyway. Inside were photocopies of her DD-214, her teaching credentials, and a single photograph of her in uniform from 12 years ago. Everything was still there. Nothing was taken, but someone had definitely been inside her classroom. Quinn closed the drawer and sat down at her desk. She didn't call security. She didn't report the incident. She just made a mental note of the time, the date, and the condition of the lock. 8 years in the Marines taught her one thing above everything else: document everything. Day 3. Her tires were slashed. Quinn walked out to her car at the end of the day and found all 4 tires flat, not punctured, slashed. Deep cuts across the sidewalls that couldn't be patched. Whoever did it wanted her to know they did it on purpose. The parking lot was mostly empty. Most teachers left by 3:30. Quinn stayed until 5 grading papers. Now she stood alone in the darkening evening with a car that wasn't going anywhere. She could have called a tow truck. She could have filed a police report. She could have marched into the principal's office and demanded answers. Instead, she pulled out her phone and took pictures. Every tire, every angle, the surrounding area, the position of her car relative to the light poles and the security cameras. There were no security cameras. Of course there weren't. She called a tow truck. She waited 45 minutes in the cold. The driver, a young man named Marcus, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, asked what happened. "Someone cut them," Quinn said. Marcus looked at the cuts, whistled low. "You pissed someone off?" "Not intentionally." "Well, intentional or not, this is personal. You don't slash 4 tires unless you really hate somebody." Quinn nodded. She didn't explain that she already knew who did it. She didn't have proof. But she didn't need proof to know. Derek Morrison didn't like being ignored. She had embarrassed him in that hallway. Not by fighting back, by not fighting back. By refusing to give him the reaction he wanted. Men like Derek needed people to be afraid of them. When someone wasn't afraid, it broke something inside them, made them unpredictable, made them dangerous. Quinn knew this. She had studied men like Derek for years. Bullies weren't complicated. They operated on a simple system of dominance and submission. When submission didn't come, dominance escalated. First the lock, now the tires. What came next would be worse. The tow truck dropped her and her car at a repair shop on the other side of town. Quinn paid for a taxi with cash, went home, and ate a cold dinner alone in her small apartment. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She didn't post about it on social media or send an angry email to the administration. She opened a notebook and wrote down everything that had happened so far. Day 1. Hallway collision. Witnesses. Approximately 15 students, 3 teachers, the wrestling coach whose name she didn't know yet. Day 2. Lock changed without notification. Desk drawer opened. Personal belongings disturbed. Day 3. 4 tires slashed. Estimated damage $400. She closed the notebook and put it in her bag. Then she went to sleep. Day 4. Principal Holcomb called her into his office. Holcomb was a nervous man with a nervous twitch and a nervous habit of sweating through his dress shirts before lunch. He had been principal at Westbrook for 6 years and spent every one of them trying to keep Derek Morrison happy. It wasn't going well today. "Close the door," he said when Quinn walked in. She closed the door. "Have a seat." She sat. Holcomb shuffled papers on his desk, didn't look at her. Looked everywhere but at her. "I've received some complaints," he said finally. Quinn waited. "About your integration into the school community." Quinn waited. "Some staff members feel that you've been standoffish, unfriendly, maybe even hostile." Quinn almost smiled. She hadn't said more than 10 words to any staff member since she arrived. She kept to herself, did her job, went home. If that was hostile, then hostile was whatever Derek wanted it to mean. "I've also heard that you've been having some problems," Holcomb continued, "with your classroom, your car." He finally looked at her. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Quinn understood what was happening. Holcomb wasn't asking because he wanted to help. He was asking because Derek had told him to ask. He was running interference, gathering information, making sure Quinn wouldn't become a problem. She could have told him everything. The lock, the drawer, the tires, the hallway. She could have laid it all out and watched him sweat even more, but she didn't. "No," she said. "Nothing to tell." Holcomb blinked. Relief washed over his face so visibly it almost looked like guilt. "Good," he said. "Good. I just wanted to check in, make sure everything was okay. You know how these things go. Rumors, gossip, best to nip it in the bud." Quinn stood up. "Is that all?" Yes, that's all. Thank you for coming in." She walked to the door, and then stopped, turned around. "Principal Holcomb?" He looked up. "If anything changes, I'll let you know." She left before he could respond. Day 5. Derek showed up at her classroom, not during class, after school, when the building was mostly empty. He stood in her doorway with his arms crossed and his smile wide and his eyes cold. "Heard you had some car trouble," he said. Quinn continued organizing her desk. "That's too bad," Derek said. "Nice car, too. Older model, but probably reliable. Sucks when someone messes with your stuff, doesn't it?" Quinn looked up. "Is there something you need?" Derek laughed. "Just being friendly. New teacher, rough start. Figured I'd stop by, say hello. Welcome you to Westbrook properly." He walked into the classroom. Slow steps, heavy footsteps, the kind of walk designed to make people nervous. "You know, most teachers don't last long in this building, the ones who do learn how things work around here." He stopped in front of her desk. "You learning how things work?" Quinn set down her pen, looked at him. "I'm learning," she said. Derek smiled again. "Good. That's good. Because I'd hate to see you make the same mistakes other teachers made, pissing off the wrong people, making enemies instead of friends." He leaned down, put his hands on her desk, got close enough that she could smell the cigarettes on his breath. "Westbrook is a family," he said, "and in this family I'm the father. You understand what I'm saying?" Quinn didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't lean away. "I understand," she said. Derek stared at her for a long moment, waiting for something. Fear, maybe. Respect. Submission. He got nothing. He pushed off her desk and walked toward the door. "Smart lady," he said. I think you're going to fit in just fine." He left. Quinn sat in silence for a full minute after he was gone. Then she opened her notebook and wrote down everything he said. Every word, every gesture, every threat hidden inside a welcome. She was building something. Derek didn't know it yet, but she was building a case so complete, so airtight, so devastating that when she finally opened it, there would be nothing left of him but ash. Week 2. The bullying shifted from personal to professional. Derek started showing up at her department meetings. He wasn't in her department, he taught gym. But he sat in the back of the history meeting like he owned the room, which he basically did, and made comments every time Quinn spoke. "That's cute," he'd say, "but we don't do things that way here." Or, "Maybe stick to teaching and leave the curriculum to people who understand it." The other history teachers didn't defend her. They looked at their shoes. They studied their lesson plans. They found reasons to leave the room whenever Derek started talking. One of them, a young woman named Sarah, who had been at Westbrook for 2 years and looked like she hadn't slept in most of them, caught Quinn in the hallway afterward. "Don't take it personally," Sarah said. "He does this to everyone." "Does what?" Quinn asked. "Breaks them down. He finds something about you, some weakness, and he just presses on it until you either quit or become useless to him." Sarah looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Last year it was Mrs. Patterson. She tried to report him for verbal harassment. Nothing happened. He found out, made her life so miserable she had a nervous breakdown in February. She's on medical leave now. Won't be coming back." Quinn listened, said nothing. "The year before that, it was Mr. Donovan. He fought back, went to the school board, threatened to go to the news. Derek's lawyer sent him a cease and desist letter, and then Derek personally made sure every single one of Donovan's classes got moved to the portable units outside. In the winter, in Michigan." Sarah shook her head. "Donovan quit in March, moved to Arizona, told me he'd rather teach in a desert than spend one more day in that building." Quinn looked at Sarah. "Why are you still here?" Sarah laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "Because I have student loans, because the market is terrible, because I keep telling myself next year will be different." She touched Quinn's arm. "But it won't be. Not as long as Derek Morrison is in that building." Sarah walked away. Quinn stood in the hallway for a long time. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even angry. She was something else. Something that had been growing inside her since that first morning in the hallway. She was resolved. These people had given up. They had accepted Derek as an unavoidable fact of life, like weather or taxes. They had convinced themselves that fighting back was pointless, that the system was rigged, that the only way to survive was to keep their heads down and wait for something to change. But something wasn't going to change. Someone had to change it. Week 3. The wrestling coach approached her in the parking lot. His name was Tommy, late 20s. Built like someone who spent a lot of time in the gym but not enough time eating. Nervous energy. Eyes that couldn't quite look at her. "Hey," he said. Quinn stopped walking. I wanted to say something." She waited. Tommy looked around. The parking lot was mostly empty. A few cars scattered across the asphalt. No one close enough to hear. "The lock thing," he said. "That was me." Quinn didn't react. "Derek told me to do it. Said he wanted to send a message. I didn't want to. I mean, I did it, obviously, but I didn't want to." He rubbed the back of his neck. "The tires, too. I didn't do that. I don't know who did that. But I heard about it. Everyone heard about it." Quinn studied him. He wasn't lying. He was too nervous to lie. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Tommy finally looked at her. "Because I've been here 5 years. I've seen him do this to 6 teachers. 6. And every time I just stood there and watched. Didn't say anything, didn't do anything. Just kept my head down and pretended I didn't see what was happening." His voice cracked. "I don't want to be that guy anymore." Quinn nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. Tommy blinked. "Okay? That's it?" "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Scream at me. Tell me I'm a coward. Tell me I'm just as bad as him." Quinn shook her head. "You're not as bad as him. You're scared. There's a difference." Tommy's eyes got wet. "I don't know how you do it," he said. "How you stay so calm. How you don't just lose it." Quinn looked past him toward the building where Derek Morrison was probably sitting in the teacher's lounge right now, drinking free coffee and laughing at someone else's expense. "Calm is a weapon," she said. "People forget that. They think anger is power. They think shouting means winning, but calm. Calm makes people uncomfortable. It makes them wonder what you know that they don't. She looked back at Tommy. Derek thinks I'm calm because I'm weak. He thinks I'm not fighting back because I can't fight back. She picked up her bag. He's wrong. She walked away. Tommy stood in the parking lot for a long time after she left. Week 4. Derek escalated again. This time it wasn't subtle. It wasn't a change lock or slashed tires or veiled threats in her classroom. This time he came for her in front of everyone. It was the first home game of the football season. The whole school was there. Students, teachers, parents, administrators, school board members. The stands were packed. The band was playing. The smell of hot dogs and popcorn hung in the air like perfume. Quinn didn't want to be there. She didn't like crowds. She didn't like the performative energy of high school sports. But attendance was expected, almost mandatory, and she was still new enough that missing the game would have been noticed. She stood near the fence by the end zone, away from the other teachers, watching the game with the detached curiosity of someone who had never understood why adults cared so much about children playing a game. Westbrook was winning. Of course they were winning. Derek Morrison didn't lose football games. He recruited. He cheated. He did whatever it took to keep his record clean and his reputation untarnished. At halftime, the announcer called for a moment of recognition. Would all Westbrook staff please come down to the track for a special presentation? Quinn hesitated. Something felt wrong. Something about the way the announcement was delivered, and the way Derek was already standing on the track with a microphone in his hand, the way Principal Holcomb was standing next to him looking like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. She walked down anyway. What choice did she have? 20 or 30 teachers gathered on the track. Some looked confused, some looked nervous. A few, the ones who had been at Westbrook long enough to know Derek's patterns, looked like they were about to be sick. Derek raised the microphone. I just want to take a moment to welcome everyone to the new school year, he said, and to recognize some of the new faces we have on staff this year. He looked directly at Quinn. Ms. Quinn, our new history teacher. Would you come up here, please? The crowd turned to look at her. Students in the stands leaned forward. Parents whispered to each other. Quinn walked to the center of the track, stopped 10 feet from Derek, didn't get closer. Ms. Quinn comes to us from... Derek paused, looked at a piece of paper in his hand. Well, actually, it doesn't say where she comes from. It just says she's qualified and experienced. A few people laughed nervously. But here's what I want to know, Derek said. Why would someone with Ms. Quinn's qualifications want to teach at a small school like Westbrook? He smiled. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. Is it because no one else would hire her? Is it because she's running from something? Is it because she's not as qualified as her resume says? The crowd went quiet. Not normal quiet. The kind of quiet where people realize something irreversible is happening and they don't know how to stop it. Quinn stood perfectly still. I'm just asking questions, Derek said, holding up his hands like he was innocent. The parents have a right to know who's teaching their children. The students have a right to know who's standing in front of them every day. He walked toward Quinn, got close, spoke into the microphone so everyone could hear. So how about it, Ms. Quinn? Tell us your story. Tell everyone why you're really here. The silence stretched. The entire stadium was watching, hundreds of people, maybe 1,000, all of them waiting for Quinn to say something, do something, break something. She looked at Derek. Then she looked past him, at the stands, at the faces of the students she taught every day, at the parents who trusted her with their children, at the teachers who had given up hope. She could end this right now. She could tell them everything. The hallway, the lock, the drawer, the tires, the threats. She could expose Derek Morrison in front of everyone and let the crowd decide who to believe. But she didn't have enough yet. Not enough evidence. Not enough witnesses. Not enough documentation. If she spoke now, it would be her word against his. And Derek had 15 years of relationships, favors, and fear working in his favor. So she did something that made Derek's smile falter. She smiled back. I'm here to teach, she said. The words were simple, quiet, almost lost in the microphone. But everyone heard them. I'm here to teach your children history, to help them understand the world, to prepare them for whatever comes next. She paused. That's my story. That's why I'm here. Derek stared at her, waiting for more, waiting for anger, for a defense, for something he could use against her. Nothing came. Well, he said finally, that's Nice. He tried to laugh. It came out wrong. Anyway, let's get back to the game. The crowd slowly returned their attention to the field. The band started playing again. The moment passed, but something had changed. People looked at Quinn differently now, not with suspicion, with something closer to respect. She had stood in front of 1,000 people and refused to be broken. That scared Derek more than anything else. The next morning, Quinn found a note on her desk. It was written on notebook paper in blocky capital letters. "Leave now, while you still can." She read it twice. Then she put it in a plastic bag, sealed it, and added it to her collection. Day 30. Quinn had been at Westbrook for 1 month. In that time, she had documented 37 individual incidents of harassment, intimidation, or retaliation. 37. She had photographs, recordings, witness statements, and a detailed timeline of every single event. She had notes from conversations with teachers who were too scared to go on the record, but willing to talk off the record. She had copies of emails that showed Derek manipulating schedules, altering grades, and threatening colleagues who crossed him. She had enough to destroy him, but she didn't have enough to protect the people who would come forward. That was the problem. Derek wasn't just a bully. He was a system. He had allies in the administration, on the school board, even in the local police department. If Quinn went after him with what she had now, he would survive. He would use his connections to discredit her. He would make her look like the aggressor, the unstable newcomer who couldn't handle the pressure of a real teaching job. She needed more. She needed something so undeniable, so public, so catastrophic, that even Derek's allies couldn't protect him. She needed him to hang himself, and she knew exactly how to make it happen. Week 6. Derek called a mandatory staff meeting, not the principal. Derek. He stood at the front of the library with a clipboard and a whistle around his neck like he was coaching a team instead of running a meeting. "We've got a problem," he said. The teachers shifted in their seats. A problem coming from Derek usually meant someone had done something he didn't like. "Some of you aren't pulling your weight. You're coming in late, leaving in early, slacking off in the classroom, and it's starting to show in our test scores." His eyes found Quinn. One teacher in particular has been causing some issues, refusing to participate in school activities, ignoring department protocols, making the rest of us look bad. Quinn didn't look away, didn't shrink, didn't give him the satisfaction of discomfort. Derek walked toward her, stopped in front of her desk. "You want to say something?" he asked. "No." "No? Nothing at all?" "I don't have anything to say." Derek leaned down, got close, spoke quietly so only she could hear. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You think you're tough. You think you can wait me out. But I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. I will break you. I will make you wish you never set foot in this building." Quinn looked at him. "Is that all?" Something flickered in Derek's eyes. Confusion. Frustration. Something that looked almost like fear. He straightened up, walked back to the front of the room. "Meeting adjourned," he said. The teachers filed out quickly, desperate to escape the tension. Quinn stayed in her seat. She pulled out her notebook, wrote down everything Derek had said. Then she wrote down something else. A plan. A trap. Something so simple and so devastating that it would change everything. Week 7. The fitness challenge. It was Derek's idea. A fun staff event to build morale and encourage healthy competition. Obstacle course, relay races, physical fitness tests. The kind of thing Derek excelled at and most teachers dreaded. Quinn knew exactly why he organized it. He wanted to humiliate her in front of everyone. He wanted to prove that she was weak, that she didn't belong, that she couldn't compete with someone like him. He had no idea what he was walking into. The event was held on a Saturday morning. The football field had been transformed into an obstacle course with climbing walls, cargo nets, balance beams, and a muddy pit that smelled like standing water. About 50 teachers showed up. Most of them looked miserable. A few of the younger ones seemed excited, the ones who hadn't been at Westbrook long enough to understand that Derek's fun events were really opportunities for him to assert dominance. Derek stood at the starting line in expensive workout clothes, a stopwatch around his neck, his chest puffed out like a peacock. "Here's how this works," he announced. "We're going to run the course in pairs. Best time wins. Bragging rights for the rest of the year." He looked at Quinn. "I'll go first, and I'll take the new teacher as my partner." A few teachers exchanged glances. They knew what was happening. They knew Derek was about to destroy her. Quinn walked to the starting line. She was wearing simple black workout pants and a gray t-shirt. No expensive gear, no brand names, just functional clothing that allowed her to move. Derek looked her up and down. "You sure you're dressed for this?" he asked. "We've got some pretty intense obstacles. Wouldn't want you to get hurt." "I'll be fine." Derek smirked. "All right. On my count. 3, 2, 1, go." They took off. The first obstacle was a 10-foot wall. Derek hit it hard, pulling himself up with his upper body, grunting with effort. He got over in about 6 seconds. Quinn hit the wall differently. She didn't grab the top and struggle. She ran straight at it, planted 1 foot high on the surface, used her momentum to launch herself upward, and cleared the wall in under 3 seconds. Derek was still catching his breath when she landed next to him. He stared at her. "Lucky start," he said. The next obstacle was a cargo net. Derek climbed slowly, carefully, his weight making the rope sway. Quinn climbed like she'd been doing it her whole life, because she had. Cargo nets were standard training for Marines. She was up and over before Derek was halfway to the top. The balance beam was next. Derek wobbled, almost fell, caught himself. Quinn walked across like she was strolling down a sidewalk, the mud pit. Derek tried to jump over it, didn't make it. Landed chest deep in brown water, came up sputtering and swearing. Quinn jumped the same distance, cleared it by 2 feet, landed on the other side without a single drop of mud on her clothes. The crowd had stopped pretending to do anything else. Every teacher, every staff member, every volunteer was watching Quinn destroy Derek Morrison on his own course. By the time they reached the final obstacle, Derek was 15 seconds behind and falling further. He was exhausted. His face was red. He was breathing in ragged gasps. Quinn wasn't even sweating. She crossed the finish line, looked back at Derek struggling through the last few obstacles, waited. When he finally crossed, he didn't look at her. He walked straight to the water table and stood there with his back to everyone, his shoulders shaking. The crowd didn't know what to do. They had just watched the impossible. The king had been dethroned by a quiet history teacher in a gray t-shirt. Quinn walked over to Derek. "Good race," she said. Derek turned around. His face was a mask of pure rage. "You cheated," he said. "I didn't cheat." "You must have. No one beats me on my own course." Quinn looked at him. "I'm not no one." Derek's hands clenched into fists. His jaw tightened. He looked like he was about to explode. And then he did something that changed everything. He swung at her, right there. In front of 50 witnesses, Derek Morrison threw a punch at a fellow teacher. Quinn didn't block it, didn't dodge it. She let it hit her shoulder, let the impact spin her around, let herself fall to the ground. It was calculated. Every movement was calculated. She needed witnesses. She needed proof. She needed something so undeniable that even Derek's allies couldn't explain it away. A punch in front of 50 people was exactly that. "Get up," Derek snarled. "Get up and fight me like a man." Quinn stayed on the ground. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Derek grabbed her by the collar of her shirt, lifted her halfway off the ground, and pulled back his fist for another punch. And that's when Tommy tackled him. The wrestling coach hit Derek low and hard, driving him into the ground. They rolled in the grass, fists flying, until 2 other teachers pulled them apart. "What the hell's wrong with you?" Tommy shouted. "You can't hit people. You can't just hit people." Derek spat blood from a split lip. "She started it. She didn't do anything. She was lying on the ground. You were hitting her." The crowd was buzzing now. Phones were out. People were recording. Someone had already called the police. Quinn sat up slowly, touched her shoulder where Derek had punched her, winced for effect. She wasn't hurt. The punch had barely registered, but she needed everyone to think she was hurt. She needed them to see her as the victim. The police arrived 10 minutes later. 2 officers, both of whom knew Derek, both of whom looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "What seems to be the problem?" the older officer asked. Derek spoke first. "This woman attacked me. I was defending myself." Tommy stepped forward. "That's not what happened." The officer looked at him. "And who are you?" "Tommy Vance, wrestling coach. I saw the whole thing. Derek punched her first. She was on the ground. He grabbed her by the shirt and was about to hit her again when I pulled him off." The officer looked at Quinn. "Is that true?" Quinn nodded. Didn't speak. "Anyone else see what happened?" A dozen hands went up. Teachers who had spent years staying silent, years looking away, years pretending not to see what was happening in front of them, finally raised their hands. "I saw it," Sarah said. "Me too," said another teacher. "He hit her first. She didn't do anything," said a third. The officer sighed. And he knew Derek. He probably liked Derek, but he couldn't ignore a dozen witnesses. "Mr. Morrison, I'm going to need you to come with us." Derek's face went pale. "Are you arresting me?" "We're going to ask you some questions down at the station. If what these witnesses are saying is true, we might need to talk about charges." Derek looked at Quinn, really looked at her. For the first time, he saw something in her eyes that made him take a step backward. Calm, still, patient. She had planned this. She had let him punch her. She had let him humiliate himself. She had let him prove to everyone what he really was, and now she was watching him get led away in handcuffs. "This isn't over," Derek said as the officers walked him to the cruiser. Quinn watched him go. "No," she said quietly. "It isn't." Derek was released after 3 hours. The officers called it a misunderstanding and let him go with a warning. No charges were filed, no report was written. The system protected him like it always had. But this time, something was different. The teachers had seen him, the teachers had spoken up, and the teachers had recorded everything. By Sunday afternoon, the videos were everywhere. Local news, social media, national education and forums. High school coach punches teacher at school event. The story spread like wildfire. The school board called an emergency meeting on Monday morning. Quinn sat in the back of the room. She watched Derek's allies try to defend him, try to spin the story, try to blame her for what happened. She watched Principal Holcomb sweat through 2 dress shirts. She watched the board members argue among themselves, unsure of what to do. And then she stood up. "May I speak?" The room went quiet. The board president, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen who had been on the board for 20 years, nodded. Quinn walked to the front of the room, pulled a folder out of her bag, held it up. This folder contains documentation of 37 separate incidents of harassment, intimidation, and retaliation by Derek Morrison since I started working at Westbrook High School 7 weeks ago. She opened the folder. Included in this folder are photographs of my slashed tires, a police report of the incident, witness statements from 3 teachers who saw Derek near my car that night, and a receipt from the repair shop showing $400 in damages. She turned the page. Also included are photographs of my classroom lock after it was illegally replaced without my knowledge or consent, along with a statement from the maintenance supervisor confirming that the lock was ordered specifically for my door by someone using Derek Morrison's purchase code. Another page. Here's the threatening note I found on my desk, preserved in a plastic bag to protect fingerprints, along with a statement from a custodian who saw Derek enter my classroom after hours on the night the note was left. She kept going, page after page, evidence after evidence, a mountain of documentation so complete, so meticulous, so devastating that the room fell into stunned silence. I also have recordings of Derek threatening me in my classroom, in the hallway, and in the teacher's lounge. I have emails from other teachers documenting years of similar behavior. I have statements from former Westbrook employees who left because of Derek Morrison. She closed the folder. This isn't about me anymore. This is about a system that has allowed one man to terrorize an entire school for 15 years. This is about the teachers who had nervous breakdowns, and the teachers who moved to other states, and the teachers who just gave up because no one would help them. She looked at Mrs. Chen. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for accountability." The room was silent. Mrs. Chen removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes, put them back on. "Ms. Quinn," she said, "would you be willing to share this documentation with the board's legal counsel?" "I've already made copies." She pulled out 12 identical folders and set them on the table, one for each of you. The meeting lasted 6 hours. By the end, the board had voted unanimously to place Derek Morrison on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Principal Holcomb was given a choice: resign or be fired. He resigned. The superintendent announced a complete review of Westbrook's reporting procedures and disciplinary policies. Derek's allies on the board tried to fight back, but the evidence was too strong. The videos were too public. The story had gone too far. For the first time in 15 years, Derek Morrison was powerless. Derek didn't go quietly. The next morning, Quinn arrived at school to find her classroom door padlocked, not with a school lock, with a heavy chain and a combination lock that didn't belong to the district. Security cameras showed Derek entering the building at 3 in the morning with a chain and a padlock. He looked right at the camera, smiled, gave a thumbs up. He was daring her to do something. She called the police. This time, the officers who responded didn't know Derek. They were from a different precinct, called in because of the ongoing investigation. They cut the chain, took photographs, and added vandalism to the growing list of charges against Derek. He was arrested again that afternoon. This time, he wasn't released. The judge set bail at $50,000. Derek's friends on the school board tried to post it for him. But the board president, Mrs. Chen, had already filed a motion to freeze any district funds from being used for Derek's legal defense. Derek sat in jail for 3 days before his wife scraped together the money to bail him out. By then, it was too late. The investigation had expanded. The district attorney's office had opened a criminal case. Former employees were coming forward with their own stories. Parents were demanding answers. The news was running segments every night. Derek Morrison, the king of Westbrook High, was finished, but Quinn wasn't done. She had spent 7 weeks building a case. She had documented 37 incidents. She had gathered witness statements and photographic evidence and email chains and video recordings. She had one more thing to do. She went to see Principal Holcomb. He was cleaning out his office, packing 15 years of memories into cardboard boxes, when she knocked on the open door. Holcomb looked up. His face crumpled when he saw her. "I'm sorry," he said. I'm so sorry." Quinn sat down across from his desk. "Why didn't you stop him?" she asked. Holcomb's hands trembled. "Because I was scared," he said. "Because he had pictures of me. Things I did when I was younger. Things I'm not proud of." He wiped his eyes. "He told me if I ever crossed him, he'd ruin me, and I believed him." Quinn nodded slowly. "I need you to write a statement," she said. "Everything you know. Everything he did. Everyone he hurt." Holcomb looked at her. "If I do that, he'll destroy me." "He's already destroyed," Quinn said. "He just doesn't know it yet." Holcomb wrote the statement, 27 pages, single-spaced, detailing 15 years of corruption, intimidation, and abuse. When he finished, Quinn took the statement and added it to her folder. The folder was now over 200 pages thick. Derek's criminal trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the first 3 rows. Former Westbrook employees sat in the back, finally brave enough to show their faces. Derek's wife sat behind him, her eyes red, her hands clutching a tissue. Quinn sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution. The charges were serious. Assault, criminal mischief, harassment, intimidation of a witness. The DA had thrown everything they could at Derek, hoping something would stick. Derek's lawyer was expensive. He argued that Derek was a victim of a conspiracy, that Quinn had targeted him from the beginning, that she had manipulated the situation to make herself look like a victim. The jury listened. They looked at Derek. They looked at Quinn. And then the prosecution called its first witness. Tommy took the stand. He told the jury about the lock, about the threats, about the day Derek punched Quinn and Tommy had finally stopped being afraid. Sarah took the stand. She told the jury about Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Donovan and all the other teachers who had been destroyed by Derek Morrison. Carol, the secretary who had been at Westbrook for 22 years, took the stand. She told the jury about the complaints she had filed over the years that had been ignored, about the fear that had kept her silent, about the guilt that would follow her for the rest of her life. Holcomb took the stand. He told the jury everything. The pictures, the blackmail, the years of looking the other way while Derek destroyed people. The jury listened to every word, and then the prosecution called Quinn. She walked to the witness stand, sat down, looked at Derek. He looked back at her with eyes full of hate. "Ms. Quinn," the prosecutor said, "can you tell the jury what happened on your first day at Westbrook High School?" Quinn took a breath. "Derek Morrison knocked me down in the hallway," she said. "He laughed at me. He told me to watch where I was going, and then he walked away. How did that make you feel?" "It didn't make me feel anything. I've been knocked down before." The prosecutor paused. "What do you mean by that?" Quinn looked at the jury. "I served 8 years in the United States Marines. I was a drill instructor at Parris Island. I've been knocked down by people stronger than Derek Morrison. I've been screamed at by people louder than Derek Morrison. I've been threatened by people more dangerous than Derek Morrison." The courtroom was silent. "The difference is, in the Marines, the people who knocked me down were trying to build me up. Derek Morrison knocked me down because he wanted to keep me down." She looked at Derek. "And I don't stay down." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Derek Morrison guilty on all counts. Assault, guilty. Criminal mischief, guilty. Harassment, guilty. Intimidations of a witness, guilty. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in state prison. He was also ordered to pay restitution to Quinn for her tires, her damaged classroom property, and her emotional distress. As the bailiffs led Derek away in handcuffs, he looked back at Quinn one last time. "You ruined my life," he said. Quinn didn't respond. She didn't need to. The news coverage was relentless. National outlets picked up the story. Former Marine drill instructor takes down abusive coach. The headline wrote itself. Quinn didn't do interviews, didn't go on talk shows, didn't write a book or start a podcast or turn her story into a brand. She went back to teaching. Her classroom was moved to the front of the building, new paint, new desks, a window that opened. The district even bought her new dry erase markers, all of which worked. Tommy stopped by every morning to say hello. Sarah brought her coffee on Mondays. Carol, the secretary who had been so cold on that first day, apologized to Quinn in the hallway with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," Carol said. I should have helped you." "You're helping now," Quinn said. "That's what matters." The school board implemented new policies, anonymous reporting systems, mandatory training on workplace harassment, a zero-tolerance policy for retaliation, a committee of teachers, administrators, and parents to review complaints and ensure accountability. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was, but it was better. And better was enough. Quinn taught ancient civilizations for the rest of the year. She talked about empires that rose and fell, about a power that corrupted, about systems that fail and the people who fix them. Her students listened differently now. They knew her story. They knew what she had survived. They knew that the quiet woman standing at the front of the room had faced down a monster and won. On the last day of school, her students surprised her. They had collected money, organized a gift, presented it her after the final bell. It was a new frame, the same size as the one Derek had shattered on her first day. Inside the frame was a photograph of her class, all of them smiling, all of them holding up signs that said, "Thank you." Quinn looked at the photograph, looked at her students. For the first time in 8 months she cried, not because she was sad, not because she was happy, because she was seen. Derek Morrison served 14 months of his 18-month sentence. He was released on good behavior, which was ironic given how little good behavior he had shown in his life. He couldn't go back to coaching, couldn't go back to teaching, couldn't go back to any school in the state. His license was permanently revoked. His reputation was destroyed. His marriage ended while he was in prison. He moved to a different state, took a job at a warehouse, and disappeared into the kind of ordinary life he had always despised. Quinn heard about it through the grapevine. She didn't celebrate, didn't gloat, didn't feel satisfied. She just felt tired. Tired of fighting, tired of documenting, tired of being the one who had to stand up when everyone else sat down. But she would do it again, if she had to. If another Derek Morrison walked into another school and started knocking people down, she would do it again. Because that's what Marines did. That's what people with power did. They protected the people who couldn't protect themselves. And sometimes they let themselves get knocked down so everyone could see who was doing the knocking. Think about that for a moment. A woman walked into a building where a bully had been terrorizing people for 15 years. She didn't fight back immediately, didn't use her skills, didn't expose her power. She let him humiliate her, let him threaten her, let him destroy her property and slander her name, and finally punch her in front of 50 witnesses. She did it because she knew something that most people forget. Bullies don't just disappear. Systems don't just change. Abusers don't just stop. Someone has to make them stop. And sometimes the only way to make them stop is to let them hang themselves. Quinn could have ended Derek on that first day. 4 seconds. 3 moves. 1 unconscious bully on the hallway floor. But that wouldn't have solved anything. He would have pressed charges. His allies would have protected him. She would have been the one in handcuffs, the violent newcomer who attacked a beloved coach. Instead, she played the long game. She documented. She waited. She let him show everyone who he really was. And when the moment came, she had 200 pages of evidence, 50 witnesses, and a public record so complete that no one could deny the truth. That's the difference between anger and discipline. Anger solves one problem. Discipline solves all of them. Here's what I want you to take away from this story. Bullies exist in every school, every workplace, every community. They thrive on silence. They depend on fear. They survive because the good people look away. Don't look away. You don't have to be a Marine. You don't have to be a hero. You just have to be brave enough to say something, document something, stand next to someone who's being targeted. Because when enough people refuse to look away, the bullies stop being powerful. And when the bullies stop being powerful, the world gets a little bit safer for everyone else. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been knocked down by someone who thought they could keep you down, if you've ever watched someone get bullied and wished you had done something, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, for the next person